Arab Tov Nazareth. Good morning in Nashville. Greetings to friends of Israel around the United States and around the world. My name is Wayne Firestone, and I'm so pleased to be with you in the continuation of our virtual tour series. I know it's been a rough couple of days for many of us with friends and family in Ukraine, and for Ukrainians in particular. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you for anyone in harm's way. And indeed, we hope that a peaceful outcome will be coming soon. For those of you that are with us week in and week out, month in, month out, you know that we have done our best to build our community. We've got people here today from Jacksonville, San Diego, Brookline, Toronto, Annapolis, from Washington State, Washington, D.C., West Haven, Connecticut, Montreal, really a global audience that comes together around the love of Israel and everything in Israel. And as you're going to hear from Reuven in a moment, the good news that we can share, in addition to the kalalniot that are blooming behind Reuven in the picture on Mount Carmel, is that with spring coming, so are the tourists, and the very first groups are now arriving in Israel. So let me ask you all, for those of you that have been waiting now 2 years, 3 years, some of you longer, to come back to Israel, what's the first place you want to visit? And I'll be more particular. My colleague Cassia put it as eat, pray, and love. Where are you going to go first to either eat, to pray, or to love? And if it's the same place for all three, fantastic. Let us know. Put it into the chat. We're curious about where people who have been really just doing the virtual thing now for these last few years. Let us know where you want to do your eating, praying, and loving in Israel. We see a Negev hiking enthusiast, and I'm sure that everyone's got their own idea of what they've been missing the most. We've been doing our best to keep you sort of thinking about it. Carmel Market in Tel Aviv, Mishkanei Shananim in Jerusalem, Modi'in, Tel Aviv, Haifa to visit family. Absolutely, people who want to do bird watching and hiking, all of those things, hopefully just around the corner for many of you. So, Reuven, I know you're looking forward to having some guests, and you had your first groups coming. Tell us a little about where you want to take us today. I know you have behind you Mount Carmel, but there are lots of spots in there, and you're going to try to hit a few, especially with that very special community, the Druze community in Dalia Del Carmel. Tell us about our tour today.
Shalom, Wayne, and shalom to all our friends. It's a great pleasure to be with you once again. This time, we're going up into the mountain range, actually. And Wayne, you're so right. There is so much in the Carmel Mountain Range that it can't be done in even one virtual tour. Even a virtual tour will need to go back to the Carmel to see a few of the sites that are, I would say, almost a must-see in Israel. Today, we're going to concentrate on a couple of them, and perhaps on a future virtual tour, we will continue touring the Carmel Range. The Carmel Range is, when one says in Israel, Mount Carmel, one can mean one of three things. When they refer to Mount Carmel, they may be referring just to the northwestern plunge down into the Mediterranean with Haifa and the suburbs of Haifa there. They may be taking the other extreme and talking about the extent, and I'll show you slides of this in just a moment, the other extent of the branching off of this range towards as far as Jenin, and that's a range of some 21 miles in length. But most of us, when we talk about the Carmel, we're talking about the north to south, parallel to the Mediterranean range that runs some 13 miles and it varies at its wider parts to 5 miles, between 4 and 5 miles. And the highest peaks of this range, as we will see in the following slides, the highest peak of this range is the Horn of the Carmel. And you're looking here at a fairly good section of the length of it. You're almost seeing the northern plunge down into the sea, the Mediterranean, and you're almost seeing the end of the range along the Mediterranean, along the coastal front, where across from it is Magan Michael. This photo is actually, you're going to see a photo taken from Magan Michael, and it'll make much more sense to you. Let's have a look at the next slide, and you will see that this is the plunge down into the sea. This is the, if you like, Cape, Cape of the Carmel, where the monastery of Stella Maris, where Elijah has a cave and according to tradition from here, he goes up in a chariot of fire into the heavens. And this is the northern tip of the Carmel. In the next slide, you will see the southern tip of the Carmel that I was talking about, the one that runs parallel 13 miles of it to the Mediterranean, more or less, veering slightly east, but running north-south. And that's the other end of it. And the next slide will show you where it is. Here you're looking at a satellite map of you can see when I talked about the two different Carmels, you can see the one running north-south from Haifa, from the sea, all the way to Caesarea, across from Caesarea. And you can see the branch off towards the east that runs actually in mountains, forest and bare mountains, all the way to the hills of Ramot Naphtali. Menashe, I'm sorry, not Naphtali, wrong part of the country. Menashe, and that's the longer range, but when people really refer to the Carmel, they're referring to from Haifa to past Zichron Yaakov, across from Caesarea. Next slide, you will, in the next slide, you will be able to see on the map the places where, or at least the central place we're going to be visiting in the Carmel range. And that little red dot will tell you where Dalia Del Carmel is and where the monastery, that convent and monastery that I'm going to be focusing on is situated. So, you know, the Carmel range has so much. It has many cities. Our third largest city, Haifa, at the northern end of it. And it has one of our early cities in the days of the pioneer that we were going to be visiting later on in another virtual tour, Zichron Yaakov, on the western slopes of it towards the south. And it has in between Druze towns, in fact, the largest Druze city of some 15,000 residents in Dalia Del Carmel, and another, I would say, 7,000 to 8,000 in Usafia that are combined. They're in one municipality today, and we'll be visiting them, the Druze of Israel. So now you see where it is on the map, and we will now start touring. Next slide, and we're magically transported to Dalia Del Carmel and Isafia, the Druze townships. The Druze are a fascinating people and a very welcoming people who whose religion is formed really as a breakaway from the Egyptian Ismailiyah branch of Islam in the 11th century, in the 1000s, the late 900s, 1000s, when the founder of this religion, El Druze, who later on, he actually starts the process, but later on becomes a little bit of a heretic and is disavowed, but his name sticks. And even though they would not have chosen this name for themselves, Druze, because it comes from his name, the name has stuck and they've accepted it. Dalia Del Carmel is their largest town in Israel. They number about 1.6% of the entire Israeli population, and they break away from Islam, but they are monoistic. They are, you could say, an amalgamation of the major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And there's a little bit of each in their beliefs. And also, if you like, some Buddhism as well, because they believe in reincarnation. In the following slides, I'm going to be able to tell you a little bit more about them. First and foremost, you see these Druze holding an Israeli flag, young Druze, and a Druze flag. I'll talk about the Druze flag later, but I do want to tell you that the Druze are very loyal Israelis. They, from the conception of the State of Israel, from the very inception of the State of Israel, they demanded to be called up, conscripted in the army, like every other Jewish resident of Israel, because the Druze, one of their basic beliefs, and I need to tell you already that their religion is actually a secret religion. The ones who know the secret are the learned amongst the Druze. They can choose to be religious or not religious. The men usually turn to becoming religious at a later stage, around 40, 45. The women are much earlier, 18, 19, if they want to be religious. The percentage of the religious is a very small percent. It's very hard to estimate exact percentage, but I would dare venture that it's no more than, I would say, 10% who are religious Druze, who have, or as they call them, as they call themselves, and the other Druze call them learned Druze, and the rest of the Druze population. And it's a matter of choice. One can be in the same family and have religious members who are dressed differently, who are initiated into the secrets of the religion, and non-religious Druze members. In fact, even in the same household, husband can be non-religious, the wife religious, or the other way around. But they are all fiercely loyal to the state they live in. Notice I said the state they live in. If they're Israeli Druze, they're fiercely loyal to Israel. If they live elsewhere, they are fiercely loyal to the place they live. And this is because of one of the basic tenets of their belief. And as I said, not all of them are practicing religious Druze, but they all accept the basic tenets. And the basic tenet is that God has placed them in the position he has placed them, and it is for them to live out the life as well as they can, as faithfully as they can, and when that experience is over, they are reborn. In other words, when they die, they are reborn at the same instant in another Druze child somewhere in the Druze world. I'm sorry, I turned this off and I don't know why it suddenly came on again.
It's all those tour groups trying to get a hold of you.
Sorry about that. I'll power it off to make sure it won't ring again. Apologies. So back to the Druze. Technology. Done. Sorry. Okie doke. So one of the basic tenets is that God has placed them in this position that they are in, and they're supposed to gather that experience up, because in the next life, when they are reborn, will be maybe a totally different experience. And the idea is they will go through these experiences, gathering them up until they come as close to their maker as they can. Now, we don't know what they believe about others, non-Druze, whether non-Druze are also reincarnated and go through the process, because even the I would call them secular Druze don't have any idea about that. But the idea is that the Druze male will only be born as a male again, and the Druze female, the same thing. And now, even though they're such a open and friendly and hospitable people, they are absolutely segregated in their belief and way of life. There is no intermarriage. Any intermarriage, well, when I say there is no intermarriage, there's not supposed to be intermarriage. And the intermarriages that from Druze to non-Druze, whoever is so negligible that I think can be counted on one or two hands. It's a very rare thing to happen. Druze marry Druze. If they don't, then they can't bring in a non-Druze to the community. They have to leave with their partner. They remain Druze, but their children are no longer Druze. And the Druze himself will be reborn, but his children and his wife, who is not a Druze, won't be. So there's virtually no intermarriage. Since, you know, the Druze, when he or she passes away, is instantly reborn, the body, in other words, is merely a shell. And what is important is the soul. And thus, the Druze do not have names on their tombstones. The only Druze who have names on their tombstones are the boys in the IDF who fall in battle and are buried with military honors. And because the military insists on it, then the tombstone is named and dated and everything else. But the Druze don't need it. And because they say, okay, this is only a shell, the important thing is the soul, and the soul goes on. So their tombstones don't have names. And in fact, if you ask a Druze child, where's your grandparent buried? They'll say, I don't know. And why does it matter? Of course, there's mourning, the loss of someone who you are familiar with and love and so on. But there's consolation in the thought that this goes on, he goes on or she goes on in another life. There are incredible stories of incidences that have been recorded by the Druze of young kids who in other societies would be whisked away to the psychologist or psychiatrist when they come up with the idea that they know who they were in a past life. But in the Druze society, it is taken as a granted. One of the basic principles, another basic principles of the Druze is to be totally loyal to the state you're living in. And thus, you see the Druze young soldiers who are brave fighters and serve the country, insist on being conscripted. Where does this idea come from? The idea comes from the positioning that God has put them in, is for his plan. And if they are an Israeli Druze, then that's the way they should live their life out, as Israeli Druze loyal to the state. They have absolutely, the Druze people have absolutely no longing or even desire for a country of their own, independence, or anything like that. It's where they are placed by the Maker for his plan, and they don't fight it. So Syrian Druze is very loyal to Syria. He has a little bit of a problem now because which Syria? The Lebanese Druze has the same problem. The Israeli Druze doesn't have this problem. He's loyal to the state of Israel. And but the Druze in the Golan have a little bit of a problem because at the moment they're in Israel, but they are not quite sure of whether one day they may be back as Syrian Druze. So they're a little unsure and a little confused about it, but the Israeli Druze, absolutely loyal to Israel. The next couple of slides are going to show you a little bit of the lifestyle of these Druze, and I'll try and explain a little more of the interesting points about them.
Reuven, as we're moving through and you're showing us more of the village, there's one clarifying question that I just wanted to throw at you that came from one of our viewers that was asking about the difference between the Druze and other tribes, presumably Bedouin in the south. Can you just briefly explain the difference between the Druze and the Bedouin?
Great question. Total difference. Even though the Druze are considered Arab as peoples, their religion is Druze, and it is a totally different religion to Islam, in the sense that some of the Islamic teachings have been adopted, but so have many Christian teachings and many Jewish teachings been adopted. And it is, I would call it even an amalgamation of sorts with a very particular emphasis on this idea of reincarnation. So they are Arab, but not Christian, not Muslim. And if they're in Israel, they are Israeli Druze. Even though you could, some people refer to them as part of the Israeli Arab community, they are a totally distinct community, very different to the other Israeli Arab communities. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at Dalia Del Carmel.
Terrific. Next slides. First of all, the dress. Now, how can you tell who is a religious Druze and who is a secular Druze? Immediately by the dress. A Druze male will, once he becomes religious, shave his head and sometimes his entire face, except for the mustache. Now, this is a very ironic reason for keeping the mustache, because one is supposed to be humble and not full of self-pride. And the mustache was thought to sort of deface the face and make you a little more humble. But ironically, the mustache becomes a symbol of prestige and standing amongst the religious Druze, and they have these sergeant major mustaches sometimes, which stand out without beard. Some of the Druze have beards as well, as you can see, but not all of the religious Druze have beards. They all have bald heads and handlebar mustaches. They dress with a fez-like cap, which has a color on the top of it, and the color, one of the 5 colors of the Druze flag, actually symbolizes their standing in the religious community. Now, as I said, it's a secret religion. We don't know all the secrets, but the flag represents 5 lines of prophets who are reincarnated over and over again. And when one reaches the level of the green, which is the top level, that is, according to our belief, we don't know secret religion, but according to our belief, it is the line of Jesus, the line of Elijah, the line of prophets that actually come from the number 1 prophet in the Druze religion, and this we know, even though it's a secret religion, and that is Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, the Midianite priest, who is right at the top of the pyramid, if you like. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you how the women are dressed. Incidentally, the non-religious males are dressed just like you and me, total Western dress in Israel. They take on the dress of the culture that they're living in, of course. But here, you will not be able to identify a secular Druze from any other Israeli by his dress. Next slides, and I'll show you how the women dress. The women cover their hair, sometimes with the, like the one in the middle, and the more, the older women cover themselves to the ankles and to the wrists. The younger religious women to the elbow. And the head covering does not cover the face, and sometimes will cover only the mouth, but certainly not the face, the hair and the mouth. And as I said, the Druze women usually, if they're going to be religious, I said a very small percentage of them actually become religious. If they're going to be religious, they are religious at a younger age, usually 18, 19, 20, whereas the males usually wait until they're 40. Once they become religious, of course, no alcohol, no nicotine, and never, never, never to lie. A religious Druze is forbidden to lie about anything. He must tell the truth, but about one thing he must not tell the truth about, and he must not tell a lie, but he must not reveal the secrets of the religion. And thus, when you ask a Druze religious questions, he will do his best to answer you without lying, but without revealing anything. In the next couple of slides, I want to show you some other aspects of the life that we have in the Druze communities. And here you have the flag, the Druze flag, 5 colors, the green triangle, the red, the yellow, the blue, and the white. They all resemble something in nature, but they also resemble the 5 prophets. Who exactly all the prophets are, we don't know, but you'll see this flag in all Druze communities, the Druze flag, 5-colored. Next slide, you will see a man who came from Britain to live amongst the Druze. So Laurence Oliphant, who was a deeply religious Christian, who actually later on, he's author, he wrote quite a bit, who actually had plans, laid out plans to colonize Palestine, even while it was a Turkish part of the Turkish Empire, to colonize it with Jews, Jewish colonization in the land of Palestine, because of the idea of regrouping the Jews before the end of days in the Holy Land. And when he was here, he met with Turkish officials. He wasn't able to make headway, although his idea was supported by some. The leadership thought it was all a ploy, a British imperialist ploy, and his ideas never took off, but he lived in Dalia Del Carmel in a beautiful house. I'll show you a picture of the house. That's Laurence Oliphant. He was married, And he had a secretary, and a male secretary, Jewish guy by the name of Naftali Imber. In the next slide, you'll see the house where Oliphant and his wife lived. The monument in front of the house you see is a Roman pillar that he put up there for his wife. The house today is used as a museum for the Druze, and especially a memorial to the Druze fighters in modern times who have their story told in this house that has become a museum. But while it was a house, Naftali Imber, who was the secretary to Oliphant, who was considered incidentally by the Turks as a British spy, Naftali Imber wrote a poem called The Hope. This poem that he wrote here in this house and rewrote, modifying it, became Hatikva, the national anthem of Israel, The Hope. So it was written actually here in this house. In the next couple of slides, I want to show you a little bit about the lifestyle in Dalia Del Carmel, an extremely colorful city. The times to come and visit Dalia Del Carmel and Isafia, if you like hustle and bustle and color and crowds, is on the weekends, where literally thousands of Israelis come to taste the foods and see the offerings of the many, many shops and colorful displays in Dalia Del Carmel. We're going to have a short video for you here to walk you through a little bit of Dalia Del Carmel to give you a sense of what you would see. So if we can take our walk. Lots of color, lots and lots of color. Now, I apologize for the shakiness of the camera. I'm the cameraman and I take all the blame, bumping and walking around, and you just saw where I parked my van, and continuing the walk down now along the main street to show you some of the offerings here in Dalia Del Carmel. Well, there's my van. That's where I parked it, and it's still there. And across the road are some eateries and a very nice shop to visit. Lots of artwork as well. And of course, restaurants. Many, many Israelis come not only for the shopping, but for the food. The Druze have their own twist on certain foods that are absolutely delicious. At least I love them, and most people I take to these places absolutely love the food. Of course, they have also the standard fare that is in Israel of schnitzel and falafel, but they have their own specialities that I'm going to show you a little further in. Here we've crossed the road, seeing a couple of the restaurants, and right beside the restaurant, this shop, this is the restaurant, one of the nicer ones. There are so many, many. I'm so sorry about the stop-start of these of this video, but I take all the blame. And here is the shop. Well, I discovered that inside the shop, he has a display of something that people see in the shops in Jerusalem, in the shuk in Jerusalem. and that is the embroidery that are on dresses and bags and everything else. And I discovered that they're actually made here in Dalia Del Carmel, in this guy's workshop factory, and sent to Jerusalem to be sold. These are the embroideries I'm talking about. They are actually Druze handicraft that are sold in the Arab markets in East Jerusalem.
Reuven, we got tons of questions coming in,
Yes,
so let me just throw a few by you.
Absolutely.
Is there do the Druze have their own language, or they speak Arabic?
They speak Arabic. They speak very fluent Hebrew without the accent of the usual Israeli Arab accent, with a B becoming a P becoming a B. But the Druze, from their Hebrew, you would not be able to identify them as Arab. Whereas with the Muslim Arabs, the Christian Arabs, from their Hebrew, you can already make out that they are Israeli Arabs and not Israeli Jews. The Druze, much more difficult, much more difficult. They don't have the typical accent. Their language is Arabic. Their holy book, the secret books, are written in Arabic, but in code, color code. But they speak, they're really bilingual. They speak a perfect Hebrew. And that's the end of the video, with two religious Druze women coming towards us. And I want to show you a little bit of the food. Here you see they're quite high up in the religious ranking, with the red color on the fez, and they are very much into communal eating, especially at their gatherings in places not of worship, but of gathering. Their worship places, chilwe, they're called, very indescript houses that, because of their secret religion, because their secret religion is because they were persecuted, and that's why they live in the hills and in the mountains. So their places of worship, the chilwe, is very indescript. You can't tell it's a place of worship from the outside. The Druze women and the men have equal standing in the religion, although there is a separation in the chilwe itself, one side for men, one side for women, just like with the Jews. But they have equal standing. They can be religious leaders, just like the males can be religious leaders. Their other laws, dictated by the religious to the rest who absolutely accept them, are very, very, I would say, modern and Western in their idea. I'm talking about women's rights, and really quite an equal society, although the women do not automatically get conscripted, whereas the men do. But the divorce laws and so on are very equal, and unlike the other sectors of Arabs, Israeli and otherwise, the Druze are much more, I would say, westernized in that way than the rest of the Arab minorities. If we can continue on the slides, I will show you some of the foods that they have. Of course, we have vegetarian, and we have also meat. And the vegetarian, I have to tell you, is absolutely delicious, and one would have to go to Usafia to enjoy a real spread while you hear from the Druze themselves about the Druze. You know, one of the things they say, and as we go through the slides, I want to talk about it. One of the things they say is that pizza actually was exported from the Druze to Italy by the Crusaders, and eventually the Druze bread becomes the Italian pizza. I don't know if there's truth in this belief or not, but these are Druze pizzas or pitas, they call them, not pizza, that go back to the 1200s. So maybe they really invented the pizza. What you'll see in the next couple of slides, once again, are the foods. Here you see stuffed vegetables like zucchini stuffed, tomato stuffed, pepper stuffed with rice and sometimes minced lamb. You'll see makluba in the center of a rice dish with meat and cooked very, very, or bulgur. It doesn't have to be rice, it can be bulgur. You see hummus and tahini, of course, stuffed vegetables and grape leaves. And another one of the foods that the Druze specialize in is what we call, in short, in Israel, Druze pita. In the next slide, I want to show you how they make them. The women, by roadside stands, knead the dough, swirl it about, make a nice big disc of it, and then toss it on a tabun. A tabun is an upturned wok that bakes, fries, cooks this dough into a crispy but still flexible, large pizza-like base, where one will spread goat's cheese, Lebanon on it, a little bit of olive oil, sometimes a lot of olive oil, and hyssop, which is a sort of an oregano. The hyssop crushed up, which is called zata in Hebrew, a beautifully flavored spice. Rolled up is an excellent, excellent even meal. The kids sometimes like a chocolate spread on this Druze bread. We call it Druze bread. In the next slide, I want to show you the idea of roadside stands that make these sort of, while you're there, Druze bread and other Druze foods. So we can go to the next slide and show you a roadside stand. And we can actually quickly go through this slide to see if there are any more, while we're watching the slide, if there are any more questions that you want to pose, please go right ahead. This is we can answer questions while we.
Well, we definitely have a lot of fans of Druze pizza, Druze pita, and folks that I think you have tempted them before lunchtime here on the East Coast. Anyway, a few questions. How long do we think the Druze have been in the Carmel?
Wonderful, wonderful question. Dalia Del Carmel, we know, was founded in the 1700s. But the Druze, of course, have been escaping persecution from 1100 onwards, when they become a secret religion because of persecution, and that's when they become a closed religion. I didn't mention that you cannot become a Druze. There's no way you can be a Druze. And I can't become a Druze either. You have to be born a Druze. But their belief, we believe, once again, a secret religion, but we believe that their belief is that a Messiah, a Druze Messiah, will come and once again open up the religion to all comers who want to be accepted into it. And that's the only opportunity that you will have to go through the cycles of different experiences, being reborn until your experience allows you to be at one with your maker. Here you see the roadside stands that and the olive oil, great olive oil, very green, the Lebanon balls of cheese, and olives that they prepare themselves. Of course, you know, olives you can't eat straight off the tree. They have to be cured. So they cure them in all sorts of ways. Here you see stuffed grape leaves, which are a speciality of the Druze. Stuffed cabbage. And one can stop by these roadside stands, approaching and leaving every one of the Druze villages to have some Druze pita bread, put on the tabun. That's what this upturned wok or wok looking like a metal dish is, with a wood fire burning under it, and it makes it makes a delicious snack. And you know, a young soldier here with some practice area, some training area close by, has come while I was taking this to have a snack. Here the Druze along the roadside, and you know, one of the highlights, I would say, of many visitors to Mount Carmel is coming to see a site that is at the horn of Mount Carmel that monumentalizes the story of one of the many stories of Elijah the prophet. In fact, the Arab name for Mount Carmel is Jabal. I'm trying to remember the name in Arabic of Elijah. Elias, Jabal Mara Elias, the mount of Saint Elias, Elijah, and the whole mountain takes his name. And at the horn of Mount Carmel, one of the highest spots on Mount Carmel, is a monastery that you're seeing in front of you. In the next couple of slides, I want to be able to tell you a little bit about this this monastery and the beliefs behind it. We were looking at the hill where a Carmelite monastery stands, and it belongs to a very specific branch of the Carmelites. The Carmelites begin in the time of the Crusaders, in around the 12th, as the Crusaders are leaving, with a belief that the Virgin Mary was Queen of the Carmel. But you know, to build a church, you need a relic, and thus the churches are built on sites that have some connection with Elijah the prophet. And this particular branch of the Carmelite order, the Discalced Carmelite order, the name actually comes fascinatingly from shoeless, because the Carmelite order was getting to be a little too established and too rich, where a breakaway said, no, we're going back to the monastic idea, the idea of poverty makes purity, and we're going to discard our shoes and be discalced. So this is the order of the Discalced Carmelites. In the next couple of slides, I want to tell you a little more about all of this. The sanctuary and monastery of the Muhraka, the very name of the site in Arabic means the site of the burning. And we're going to talk about why in a second. Now, when we talk about shoeless, these are not, of course, these are not visitors to the Carmel in Israel, but these are Filipino sisters, nuns, with belonging to this order. And I put this slide in to show you that this means shoeless. I mean, even in the winter, sandals, thongs, but no shoes, the shoeless Carmelites. The next slide. I want to stop for a moment at this slide to tell you to read for you a very quick reading of why the monastery is on this particular spot. So, you know what? We'll do it without the reading. We'll do it with my how would I say, my take on the passage in Kings in the New Testament, in the Old Testament. I'm sorry, the passage in Kings. Here we have the story of how Ahab sins, bringing his wife Jezebel with their false prophets into the land, and the land is struck with a terrible drought and is suffering. This is when Elijah goes to Ahab, the king, who has brought Jezebel and the prophets of Baal into the country, and he says to him, you know, if you want to solve this problem, let's have a challenge. On the highest point of Mount Carmel, on the high point of Mount Carmel, we'll have a challenge and see who is the true God. And after this challenge, maybe the drought will be lifted. The people love this idea, and they gather on Mount Carmel, and the challenge takes place. The challenge is that Elijah tells them, I'm only one who has been faithful to the one God, whereas you are many. So you guys go first. There are 2 bullocks here, 2 bulls. You choose one, I'll have the leftover. Prepare it for sacrifice. Build an altar, put wood under the altar, put your sacrifice on the altar, but do not light the altar. I will do the same, and I will not light the altar. And then we will see whose God can light the altar, can bring the fire from the skies to light the altar. And after all this is done, Elijah says, you know what, you guys, go first. You're more than I, go first. And they start calling out to their gods to light the fire, and no fire appears. And time goes by, and Elijah says to them, you know, maybe you're not shouting loud enough. Maybe your God's asleep. Or maybe he is, the polite translations say, relieving himself, which is a pretty nasty taunt to someone's God. The Bible actually, in the Hebrew, does not say relieving himself in any way, but says covering his feet, which meant squatting over with the cloak, with your gown covering your feet while you were doing whatever you were doing over a hole you dug. So that taunt, along with the other taunts of Elijah, causes the prophets of Baal to cut themselves and bleed over the altar and call for the fire, but no fire comes. And then Elijah says, okay, my turn. He sends men to bring water from the Kidron stream and pour 4 jars of water on the wood. And he says, not enough, go and do it again and do it a 3rd time. And the wood is floating in water, and the whole sacrifice is wet. And then Elijah says, God, you instructed me to do all these things to show the people who is the true God. Send your fire. And the fire comes down and consumes the wood and the altar itself, and even the stones. And the people fall on their faces and say, the God of Israel, he is the true God. And they return to their faithfulness to God. Elijah realizes the drought is now going to be over, and off he heads. He tells Ahab, go back to Israel, your city, because the rains are coming. Now, one can actually go up on the rooftop of this monastery and get a fabulous view. And I want to show you in the next couple of slides what sort of a view one would get from here. This is the Jezreel Valley that the part of this part of the Carmel looks over. And in the next couple of slides, you'll get another 1 or 2 views. This is the altar of the modern church on the Muhraka, which means the site of the burning. And in the next slide, you'll see another view. And yet in the next slide, you will see where this view can be observed from the top of the roof. And we have a short video of the views from my jumpy walk around the top of the monastery to give you a almost 360-degree view of the surroundings of this high point on the Carmel. You can see the sign down below, Caesarea. That's where Caesarea is, and that's towards the sea. And signs point out, and on a clearer day, this was not a very clear day, but unfortunately I was there to take the video, but on a clear day, one can see where we're looking at now, from the direction we're looking at now. You can see Mount Hermon and the snow-capped mountains. It's a beautiful sight to have a real observation of the entire surroundings. And while you're watching the rest of the video, if there are any more questions, this is a good time.
Sure. I mean, these pictures are just fabulous, but we have tons of questions, Reuven. I'll try to consolidate a few. A lot of people are asking about the sort of current generation of younger Druze. Are they, post-army? Are they going to university? Are they joining tech? Are they doing other things, in other words, that other Israeli young people are doing, or are they staying in their villages? And what does that look like?
Another great question. They are integrating into all the spheres of society, politics, as members of Knesset, in government and in opposition, and certainly in the medical field, in the field of law, but all of this for the non-religious Druze, because any occupation that would interfere with speaking only the truth is banned for religious Druze, and thus you don't have any religious, excuse me please, the solicitors and lawyers amongst you, no religious Druze, solicitors, lawyers, or politicians. But, some of them sell their cars, and the best person you can buy a used car from is a religious Druze, because you can ask the question, have you had any accidents in this car? And you get an honest answer. You can ask the question if there are any problems with the car, and you will get an honest answer. But if you ask the question, can you take a little bit less for the car than you're asking? The answer will probably be, I could, but this is what I'm asking.
We had a question about the Druze dancing, and somebody asked or told a story about a famous choreographer who went to spend time with the Druze and learn their dancing and created a popular Rikudei Am dance called Shababe, and was asking if you knew anything about the dance and the name of it and what it represents.
They actually do some dancing, but I think that the more likely dance that has been adapted by the West, coming from the Arab societies, are the Muslim mystics, who have quite the dance that could be adapted to and inserted in Western dance scenes. The Druze do have their dance, of course, but it's sort of almost like a military dance.
And I think you got to the question of conversion. A lot of people have asked about it, and do you have any? We had several questions about children. Do the children actually have to choose the religion at a certain age? Is that one of the unique aspects? I know some of this is secretive, but is that something you can comment on?
That part is not secret at all. A Druze is born, and he is a Druze. If he doesn't want to be a Druze, he has no choice. He's still a Druze. but he'll leave the community and he'll do whatever he has, and his children, he doesn't continue the Druze line. Very rare, very, very rare for someone to break out, usually because of love at first sight or something like that, but very, very rare. You cannot convert in. You can disavow your Druze heritage, but you're still a Druze. And when you're reborn, you'll get another chance. So you can't convert in, and you can't really disavow totally, but you can, living your life, you choose when and if you want to be religious. With Druze, you don't have a choice. You're Druze and that's it. But religious, you can totally, and I saw one question that stood out. How do the Druze, non-religious, the secular Druze women dress? Just like the Israeli. Mm. There are no restrictions of no miniskirts or no bikinis or anything like that. The non-religious are absolutely like secular Israelis, if you like, the male and female. Although the parents of young Druze women like to slow down a little bit their Western orientation, but it's not forbidden. It's not forbidden, and as I said, you can't convert in, and you can't leave, but only by excluding yourself. And if you try to bring in from the outside, you are, how do I say, excommunicated. You can't bring a non-Druze wife or girlfriend into the community.
Well, Reuven, we're past the top of the hour. We still have questions zooming in from all over. Once again, you have chosen a topic and a venue of tremendous interest and brought us deeper into the sights, smells, and particularities of this place in the region of the Carmel region. What a rich tour! What a great destination for all of us to be thinking about exploring on a future trip. We are so grateful to continue this series with you, even as the non-virtual tours continue to open up, and we wish for all of us that trend continues well into spring and summer. But we look forward to doing this again and again and again, because what a great way for us to come together and really celebrate Israel and learn about Israel with your insights each time on our virtual tours. Want to invite everyone back again next week on March 6th as we move towards spring and International Women's Day. We'll be celebrating together with women legislators from the Knesset, as well as from states around the United States, Louisiana and Massachusetts. We have panelists, my colleague Naomi Reinhardt and board member Elsa Ben Shimon, who started her career as a lawyer, as an intern in the Knesset, and then and is now an attorney in New York. All of these wonderful people coming together for a discussion about the opportunities and challenge of women's leadership in honor of International Women's Day. We hope you'll come back and join us. We hope you'll be telling your friends about Reuven, about AIFL, about Dalia Del Carmel, about all of the wonderful programming that we have. We wish everybody a safe week. Litrod.
Litrod. Lovely being with you again, and we'll see you next time. Shalom.